Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name is Jim Bolts. I'm the chair of the Plainfield Select Board, and this is a meeting of the Plainfield Select Board. It's Tuesday, September 21st at 7 p.m. With me in the town office is Sasha Thayer. She's another board member. And Tammy Farnham is joining us on Zoom, and she is the other select board member. So we're here to start our meeting. First item on the agenda is whether there are any changes to the agenda. So does anybody have any changes they'd like to propose?
The only thing that I didn't see, pedestrian bridge. Nope, we're good. I didn't see that at first. Sorry, we're good.
All right, great. All right, so the next thing is announcements. Do you have any announcements, Sasha?
Why don't we just also list the people who are here in case
sure.
for Paula?
In addition to myself and Tammy and Sasha, there's George Cushing is on, Grace Vincent from the Center Vermont Regional Planning Commission is on, Linda Wells is on, our clerk, and Pam Kelly Kinneberg is on. A member
And just to clarify, it's well, Pam is on with me as well. So it's Pam and Cam Kelly, and we're glad to be here tonight.
Okay. Great,
so can you give Pam's so Pam and they're both
Pam.
Pam and Tam?
Pam and Cam, PAM and CAM.
Okay.
Okay.
We're
great.
over on Perkins Road off Maxfield.
And that's the same last name, right?
Yes, we do.
Check.
Okay, thanks. All right, so first agenda item is announcements. Do we have any announcements?
I was going to announce that we heard from if you have any interest in being in law enforcement, the Washington County Sheriff's Department is looking for people, which I think is pretty perennial, but they're like seriously looking for people right now. So just that I would mention that maybe this is something you were thinking of or somebody you know that you think might be a good person. Sam Hill would love to hear from anybody. He's the sheriff.
Okay, great.
And would this also be a good time to make the announcement that we're also going to be looking for, was it a school director?
Oh, yes. Well, we do have appointments down later, but I forgot to list that one. Thank you.
Looking for a school, could you be more?
The school director for the Twin Union School District.
Okay. All right, so, and do we have any public comments? Anybody from the public would like to make a comment? Mr. Cushing, go ahead, George Cushing.
Last week you mentioned, the last meeting, the special board meeting had signs for the new owner for the hardware store. One thing I'd like to mention that I think that you folks should look into is there's supposedly 7 parking places that are allowed for that building. Now would be a good time, speaking of safety, to lower that to maybe 3, because if 7 cars are parked there, you're not getting through. And back when I was a constable, I tried to do that, and the previous owner really went wild. But now that we got a new owner and everything, I think it's a good thing to change the parking.
So George, just make sure I'm understanding, you're saying that in front of the hydroponic store, there's 7 parking spots there?
Years ago, the select board said, it's back as far as 2006 or 7, maybe before that, they allowed 7 parking places. They said they could have 7 parking places in front of that building. So
Wow.
against the wall. And like I said, I tried to change that, being proactive, but the previous owner came to the select board and won the battle. But I just think now that we have a new owner, I think that definitely should take place for safety reasons.
It doesn't seem like you could park 7 there now regardless, right?
Well, some on the wall and then some right in front of the building.
Right. But I mean, given the
Well-
construction and everything, is there even space to park 7 right now? I wouldn't think it would be.
No.
It was really
Well,
really unrealistic, and but you know, it kept going on, and there was never 7 cars, but it's pretty tight, even with 3 cars. So
Right. I think that if we want to take this up, we need to notice it for a future agenda so that there's a notice of it. And then So if the other two select board members are interested in pursuing this, we can put it on a future agenda. Is that what you'd like us to do? Tammy and Sasha?
I mean, it's a good time to have that conversation since we're making changes to that area.
Okay.
So I think it's a perfect time to start those conversations.
Okay, so is the next meeting agenda the time to do it, or is some other time?
I think our agenda next time is pretty busy. So I would say that maybe the last meeting of October.
Okay,
So the 19th, okay.
all right, we'll put it on that agenda. Great. Thanks, George. Any other comments from the public about anything? All right, I don't see anybody's hand up and I don't hear anybody, so I think I'm going to head into the agenda now. So Linda Wells, it's your turn to give us the clerk and treasurer report.
Hi there, how you doing?
Hi, Linda.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Are you
Yeah.
all rested?
Yes, I had a great time. Very nice vacation, thanks.
Nice.
So, raring to
Well
go.
deserved. Well deserved.
Thank you so much. Let's see. The first thing is the approval of warrants. I noticed the September 10th payroll, you approved at your last meeting kind of prematurely. The September 10th, normally payrolls are processed every Tuesday. And you as the board sign the warrants prior to Friday when the employees actually receive their paychecks. So the warrant would normally be recorded at the following select board meeting. So for some reason,
Well, we
The-
had two of us already sign it throughout. because it
Right,
came
but-
out, And then two of us
I
signed
understand,
it.
yeah, I understand that, but normally the payroll warrants wouldn't be recorded in the minutes until the following meeting,
Okay.
only because the payroll doesn't even take effect till that following Friday. So that's been the normal process that we follow. So I wanted you to approve the September 10th minutes, payroll, and the September 17th payroll this evening.
All right, can I have a motion for that?
I move
I'll
that
make a-
we approve those.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, unanimous.
Great,
Okay, go
thank
ahead,
you.
Linda.
Thank you. And then you have your approval of minutes next.
So I know that we have up, well, we actually have up August 24th, September 7th, and September 13th. But I suspect that Tammy and Jim haven't had a chance to look at the ones for the 13th. That was the special select board meeting. But Eric did a beautiful piece in the Times Argus about warning everybody about traffic. It was really good. Anyway, so I'm assuming that Jim and Tammy haven't had a chance to look at the ones for the 13th, and I'm still working on the ones on the 27th. I would move that we approve the minutes for the 24th of August and the 7th of September.
Okay, I did review the 13th. What about you, Tammy?
I did review the 13th and the 7th, but there were some changes on the 7th that I had
Right,
noted.
You sent an email about that.
Right. So I'm not
Oh.
sure.
What were
So-
those?
There was, in the 7th, there was something in relationship to you were going to reach out in the old firehouse project, that you were going to reach out in reference to the flood and DRB or DRB, but I think you were going to check into the historical, not the flood. I was working with Jay in reference to the state and the flood.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I looked at that and I went, oh, I completely forgot that. Did
No,
even-
I think, right, I think you were doing the historical piece.
Yeah, I think so.
So I think we need to and I don't recall, I didn't go back to the video, so I think we need to look at the video and clarify those pieces. I know you were doing the historical piece and I was doing the flood, so I knew it would look wrong, but I don't know the actual conversation.
Well, I so appreciate that, because I looked at that and I just thought I spaced out.
Yeah,
So
and on the,
could we possibly approve the August 24th and the September 13th in that case?
So the 24th, I was going through meeting minutes before and then I got interrupted, so I didn't get a chance to get to the 24th. I think the 24th needs some work, so I need to figure those out. Because I quickly looked at them at one point and there's some things that need to get changed, so
What
I
about
need
the?
to,
what
so
about
I'm okay with the 13th.
Right.
Sorry.
Okay, I amend my motion to just move to approve the minutes of September 13th and to put the other minutes on the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay, all in
Sorry.
favor?
I was working on those and then I got taken away, so, sorry.
No problem. All in favor of the motion?
I,
All right, okay, another unanimous one. All right, next, we're up to, are you finished, Linda? Do you have more for your report?
I just wanted to speak to the American Rescue Plan funds, but I probably should wait until you get to that
Okay.
agenda
Are you
item.
gonna be around? If you're not gonna be around, tell us what your thoughts are.
Can I just do it quickly, maybe? I just want to mention that since the COVID began, there's been some concern about air quality in the town offices, in the town building. And so, and as you know, we have air conditioning on the first floor and need to keep the windows closed. And so we'd like you to consider that we could possibly have a better ventilation system in the town building. We'd like to have more fresh air coming in, especially with the COVID continuing on throughout the year. So I'd like you to consider using some of the American Rescue Plan Act funding so we could have a ventilation system for the downstairs, and also the second floor, of course, has not much ventilation. There's no air conditioning, and the windows apparently are painted shut once again. So it's hard to get much airflow there. And so we might want to consider doing something on the second floor for better quality, whether it be air conditioning or some kind of other ventilation that we could have installed. Just something to consider with the funding.
All right, that's good to know. I mean, personally, I think I would recommend that we have the building, maybe an audit or something done with the building, but and have them make recommendations regarding that, and then we can decide based on those recommendations what we would actually want to implement.
Okay.
So I'm fine with looking into that. I think that's a good idea. At least that's my
Okay.
personal opinion.
I
We
mean,
can add that. We can add that to the ARPA discussion later.
yeah, this was brought to my attention at the Unitarian Church. It was really completely off my radar scope, and there was this big project to look at ventilation there, and they came up with some money for it. And it's like you kind of hit your head with your fist and go, how come I didn't think about that? And how come I didn't think about that with the town building? So I appreciate this being brought up as something to think about.
Okay.
So then I think, is that it for you, Linda?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. In other words, you brought up everything you wanted to bring up.
Yes.
I don't know, she might want to tell us if we should give her a bonus or something.
Right. Thank you. So are we up to an update on pedestrian bridge construction?
I think so. So I actually got exciting news that we are moving forward now. So last week I met with the engineers, the structural engineer came out to the site. So we had Dufrane's didn't come out, but Dufrane's had been out to the site prior to that. So at this point, all three engineer companies have reviewed the project, and we have determined that we're actually not going to take out the stones going all the way down to the river like the initial plans were. I was extremely nervous about the foundation and continuing to take material out. So I kind of came to the meeting a little bit, well, they had started the meeting early, and so I came and they identified that they were going to continue that. I kept expressing my concerns of continuing to take material, because if you take the wall out, you have to slant back the other wall. And that requires us to take more material out. And we've already determined that there was a lot of voids, and the materials that we were taking out were stones. So what I was concerned with is you get to a point where you're taking out stones, then of course the concrete or the foundation, when do we affect that with all the boulders and everything we were taking out? So they decided that they would go down because we were at a point in the river where it was kind of a flat wall, and we knew that those stones went back 4 feet. And so there was some nice solid rocks there. There's a section in the middle of that wall that was kind of smaller rocks, but so they went down, all of the engineers reviewed it, the contractors, and they decided that they could do as I asked and left the wall. So we will have kind of a wall that's the original wall, and then we'll have some of the new wall that they're going to create, and they will kind of match them together based on historical, but you will be able to see the line, if you would say, of old and new. I felt like that was it was okay. And I was, so they agreed to move forward with that. And so as of last Wednesday, they were going to start working on creating a stabilizing pad that they were going to start building the walls and so on. So that was great. And I feel very good about that. I would have to say I left a lot of sleep about the foundation and just taking out more material, and there was the voids and all that. So we felt like we got to a solid ground and we were able to move forward, which was awesome. So that being said, now we're going to, and then they also had the structural engineer look at the other side. Now that they got all those materials out, there's going to be a lot less material on the east side where Mill Street is. Initially there was going to be a lot of backfill and things like that. It ended up that the wall, it can actually go right beside the current wall. So that's going to avoid a lot of like fill and so on, which that's great for the town. It also is going to relieve us of a lot of rebar and structural things that are needed, because it will go against the current concrete, which was good too. So we had some wins in the sense of it will be some major cost savings for us, because we're not going down. Obviously there's offset by the extra materials that we took out. But the good news is that we're moving forward now, and they should be, I haven't gone down and looked, but they should be actually getting some concrete in and starting restructuring so they can move on with the bridge. So that was good. I did meet with the state on Friday to review, well, the state, so Ross and the state, and then also the engineers and everybody. So we kind of did a group meeting over Zoom, and we reviewed everything. Everybody felt really good about that, and the states approved our changes. Ross, they were going to do some, I guess, because they do everything on quantities for our bid. They do everything on quantities. Ross did ask, because I've expressed the concern of needing to know whether we were going to go over and where we stand as a town. So he asked for a project change so that they could kind of recalculate where those changes were good and bad, so that the town could really get a sense of cost and where we are with that. So that we should be seeing hopefully soon. The structural engineer needed to work on getting redoing the wall plans and all those things. So that came out this morning. So that should help them be able to put some numbers together. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we should have better numbers. And but again, we have some pluses and minuses now. So I think we'll be somewhat okay. That made me feel good, and I feel like we're moving forward. So the other thing that they did mention at the meeting, which we need to really think about, and I'm just throwing it out there at this time because I don't know, is, the condition of that bridge, obviously looking at going down and looking at where that bridge is. It does need maintenance. That is a town bridge. So we kind of started having conversations. Some of this maintenance will get done with the pedestrian bridge. So they needed to go back and identify, like, I don't know if you guys have noticed, I'm assuming you have, but where the pavement keeps cracking right there, and Mike keeps saying he can't keep the pavement on the fill in the holes. And that's because the underlayment of the bridge is starting to get old, and it's cracking and so on. So some of that again is going to be fixed with this contract, and will be fixed with the pedestrian bridge. But there is going to be some of it that isn't going to be included. So I had asked them to kind of give us a sense of what that would mean in the sense of cost, because obviously if they already have staging and things like that all set up, and we have a contractor already pouring concrete and so on, it may be a good time for us to do some small maintenance to that bridge and cut down on cost. So Ross was going to work with the state and see if we could get them to come out and do some inspections and try to evaluate what might be needed, and then compare that with the contract to see what that might look like for the town. I told him I needed to know the project piece before I could present maintenance. So that's kind of where we left off on the pedestrian bridge. They did put some additional signs up because the state came out and audited the traffic control. I think Friday the contractors worked a lot on putting additional signs up. They're going to continue to work with landowners. They were trying not to cut some trees. The state is saying they need to, so they need to work with landowners to get some brush cut. And so there's some things there. They did turn off the light. I think I told you guys that. I think that was pretty much, and I know we received an email about signs. I was being by Positive Pie. The contractors are trying to keep the sign in place. Apparently people keep moving the signs. So they were actually going to get concrete and concrete them in. I haven't been down this week to see if that's any better. So that's kind of where we're at. I feel like we moved forward this week, so I was pretty happy. Any questions?
Yes, the Ross person you were referring to, what's his last name for the minute?
Ross Gowan, sorry. Ross Gowan
Yeah, Ross Gowan, sure.
from B-Trans.
Because there are two Rosses. There are two Rosses we deal with on this project. Okay, so the next item on the agenda.
Sorry, I have a
Actually, I
question.
had a question.
I'm not sure if it's okay for a citizen
It
to,
is not okay.
It's not?
It's not okay.
No, not yet, in a minute.
And
Thank you.
Sasha has the
Okay,
floor right now.
thank you, sorry.
So I have.
Yeah.
Well, just the general rule is this is a select board meeting. And the select board has to decide, Jim mentioned this in the previous meeting, has to decide whether to take public comment outside of the normal public comment time. So it's kind of a two-step
Right,
process
right.
for out of the public. Anyway, so as a select board member, first of all, I just wanted to thank you, Tammy, for all the work you're doing on this. It's just an extraordinary amount of work. And I'm so glad you ran for re-election. And I just know you put unending hours into this, and I wanted to express my appreciation. And I am absolutely certain Jim is equally appreciative.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's terrific.
Then I wanted to also ask, do you have, it had been hoped that this would be done by October if it started in July, but of course it didn't really get going until the beginning of August. And I know people have kind of raised the question of how long is this going to go on? Do we have any idea of that? And not to put you on the spot, just wondering.
So basically the way the contract read is that they, by the time when they closed down the road, they were given 90 days of road closure. Obviously they started some ahead of time, and then they'll have some finish up after the road opens, but they only have a 90-day window of a road closure within our contract. So obviously I think the road closed the last week of August. It was, but so
I think last week of
actually, I
July,
think we're
not August week.
I think we're about 20, almost 30 days into road closure. is what because they were doing a countdown. I will tell you though, that because of the delays, of the voids, they had to take out more concrete. They had to do that very slowly. And my hats off to Daniels. They have done an incredible job managing the unknowns and just being careful and taking apart that section. It's been a lot of manual work instead of going in like they were intending. They have slowly, like, I don't know if anybody's drove by, but they put the bucket down there and then they hand pick these rocks. They used a jackhammer. They were doing a lot of like removing of the slab because of the foundation piece. It's an old rock foundation. So of course, not having anything against, no material against it, only these boulders, we just don't want to damage the foundation. And so that was always our concern, and they've been really great, but it's taken time to do that. And then that was unexpected. And then also the structural engineer was on vacation, and that created delays for them as well, because they were hoping to work on both sides of the bridge at the same time. So they're trying to stay on task, and they're trying to obviously not having to dig down that far and being able to go up from here as of Wednesday. That was a time saver comparably. So again, it's kind of a balancing act, but the anticipation is the 90 days at this point. They haven't asked for an extension. And that's just the road closure.
So my other recollection is that we've asked repeatedly about the condition of this bridge and kept getting told by VTrans, oh, the bridge is fine, which seemed unlikely to me considering it's almost 100 years old. But it sounds as though now that people are actually looking at the structure, it's not quite as fine as VTrans had thought.
Well, and that's where Ross was going to start. It's been inspected. So he did verify for me. It's been inspected in the last 2 years, and the state has identified that the bridge is fine. I think it's the question of maintenance. And if you go underneath, the bridge needs maintenance. The decking, which is the top of the bridge, is getting weak as well. So he was going to ask more questions. I would agree. We have asked those questions, and we continue to be asked that question. And even the engineers have presented that same thing and are continually being told that. So that's where Ross was going to go and get more information. And we're just starting to have those conversations. So I was just letting you guys know, I don't know what's going to be needed. It's definitely to the town's advantage. This pedestrian bridge is fixing quite a bit of like the decking, the pedestrian, where the pedestrian bridge, that half will be redone. But the question is does it make sense for the town to, throw in a little bit extra to do the other decking side? I don't know, and what that entails. So again, I just wanted to let you guys know that we're starting to have those conversations. The contractor had brought it to my attention. And so I just kind of asked more questions and trying to get a sense of what that might look like. Because it seemed like it made sense if they had, it's the setup, the staging, going over the bridge, they have to do all that now. So if something truly needs to get done in a short basis, it makes more sense for the town to do it with this project than to wait. But cost is everything. So we'll see. Nothing at this time.
I thought originally that the whole decking was going to get redone, and the question was doing it half at a time or doing it piecemeal. So maybe we want to go back and look at what the expectation was on that. But lastly, my expectation and hope is that you're not going to go on vacation for 3 months until this gets done, right?
Well, I'm on vacation now, but I'm staying home, if that's what you're asking.
Yes, we want you around to keep being able to be on top of this.
Yeah. No, I hopefully things are going to be better and it will take less time. This has definitely been a little bit of stress and just trying to figure things out, but I think we're headed forward, which is good. I feel good.
Great.
About
so thanks. I think Pam Pam, did you have, I think it was Pam had asked to speak briefly. Did you have a question or something?
I did. Thanks so much, Jim. First of all, I want to say to Tammy, thank you, thank you, thank you. I don't know who in the world would do what you're doing right now. And as a citizen of Plainfield, I just so appreciate what you're doing. But I just wanted to comment, and nobody even has to respond. I'm sure everybody's read this on, you know, the Plainfield Facebook page, that the traffic lights are bad. And especially if you're coming from what we call Tim's Convenience, you know, towards the village, we have passed like a half a mile of backed up traffic on the weekend. And so I just want to say, is there a way to fix that? And I have no suggestion. And the other thought is it possible on the weekend when nobody's working to shut them off? So you don't even have to reply. I just wanted to comment. Thank you.
Yes, so, I mean, I will respond because I think this is a common question that I've been hearing, getting an email. We've actually been dealing with it on the V-Trans side as well. I mean, basically so the initial plan actually the initial traffic plan was putting Route 2 to one lane. After we did that for an afternoon, it was really, really backing things up. I think it was more like a 12 to 15 minute wait. So we quickly went back because this traffic plan has to be approved. It's Route 2, so it's approved by the state. It's pretty intense of how we got to this point. That's why the project actually started late, because this traffic plan has to go through so many departments at V-Trans or at the state. So that was the initial plan. We actually went back to opening both lanes, which had to get approved. They tried to do because the key is the reason that side keeps getting backed up is because people are trying to turn into the village. And of course, you have to wait for the traffic from East Montpelier to stop to be able to turn. So depending on that and where you can find a gap, then, that holds up the traffic. They tried to do a delay, but the only thing is the delay light only allows the first person. If the first person's not turning, what they did is then backed up the traffic so that there's no gaps anymore because those people had the right of way. So that was worse. So it's just, unfortunately, it's a busy intersection and not much room. So they can't do that turning lane. So that's the unfortunate piece. So we do feel like we've worked, this is the best scenario that we could come up with. They've made changes in the last month of how to work that. I did also this weekend on Sunday, came up to the traffic. It was past Hollister Hill turn. I did keep track of, and not that this feels any better, but I kind of immediately looked at my clock and said, how long is this going to take? Should I, note this? It only took me about 3 minutes to get through. It felt like a lot longer, but it was only 3 minutes. So, I have to, I don't know. I know you guys all went through the East Montpelier intersection. They had kind of the same issues that we're having. Like, where do you put traffic when you have all those people going through? So unfortunately, I do think that we have the best scenario. We just made, again, the V-Trans had come out and did a traffic control audit. And that's why more signs and brush needs to be cut, because we were trying not to cut people's trees, but the state said it's in the right of way and you need to do it. So, but that's not going to help with the delays. Unfortunately, we just need to, it's Route 2. There's a lot of traffic that goes through there. So we have tried different things to try to make that work. And that's the best unless you have a different solution that the state, and we've had lots and lots of conversations over the last month in reference to this traffic control and just trying to figure out, what obviously keep people safe, but also, what what can make people go through this intersection quick. So that's that piece. In reference to the cones and the lights, the reason they can't turn off the lights during the weekend because the bridge is still one way. And so I know people are been saying, well, move the cones out of the way. They're not there because there is a safety zone. Why they're there. The reason that they're not moving those cones is because those cones are going to become concrete barriers soon. So the cones are actually to help our community train them to stay within those lines, because pretty soon they will be concrete. As soon as they get done these side pieces, they're going to put a concrete barrier and the side of the bridge is coming off. So they won't be able to like turn off lights. And so it's kind of a training process for us as a community. And I can honestly say the other piece, they can't shrink down the safety zone. I've been at that bridge for many hours in the last couple of weeks, and people don't slow down during that. You would think that you would slow down because of construction. People really don't slow down. There's lots of vehicles that come down over the hill very fast. Being one, I was quite surprised. East Montpelier ambulance came through faster than I would ever imagine. And I was quite surprised by that, because these guys are working out there. They're paying attention to their work. They're working over high areas and so on, and they need to focus on that, yet traffic is like whizzing by. So I've been there and experienced that piece as well. So I appreciate it. I just don't know that we can, unless there's some other ideas, I don't know that we can do anything different at this point, except for plan for those delays at some points.
Okay, thanks. We're ready. Can we move on to Tammy, to your report on the sale of the old firehouse to Jay Southgate?
Yep. So I have been in contact with Jay. Karen had given us a name of somebody at the state, because the real thing, we have to get the exception from the state for the flood zone. So we had emailed, and I was on those emails, but I didn't recall at the last meeting, I didn't recall seeing any responses. So I did check in with Jay, and he sent out, he didn't get a response, which is why I didn't see one. So I know he was going to try, he didn't get a response to any emails. He did email out again and still didn't get a response. So I believe he was going to call the state, and I haven't heard from Jay this week. I was in touch with him last week. He said he's got some preliminary designs, but he doesn't want to spend a lot of time on designs if he can't do anything with the flood zone. So he said really he's got to get answers to the flood piece and what he's able to do before he creates designs.
Okay, that makes sense.
So that's where we are with that.
Okay,
But I haven't heard from him this week.
all right.
I'm saying, what's your question?
What is it?
Well, it's in the flood zone,
So we have to
even
get
though it's high
clearance
up
from
above the
state.
river. And so apparently the state can waive or give a variance to what would normally be the flood zone. And that's what they're checking in with to see whether there's it's way higher than most of the other flood zone in town, but that it still is, you look at our maps, it still listed as being in the flood zone.
And he needs that permission to construct, or is that to get a crane in there? What does he need?
Well, in terms of taking it down and making it a build, habitation, I think he needs, people are feeling like it needs to get cleared. So down the road, he doesn't have a problem with that.
He's waiting to get approval from the state to do what he wants to do.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we're up to, by the way, that was Eric Blaisdell asking a clarifying question. We're up to the American Rescue Plan Act Fund, and Sasha has been working on that, so I'm gonna hope that you can lead the way with this.
Okay, I have been, so if you've been looking at the website, one of the things that you notice is that I had mentioned earlier that we were going to get additional funds. The additional allocation to the town was $132,116. And we were given half of that I actually had the wrong number down a couple of times. The half that we were given was $66,057.97. And then it turned out that the amount that was going to come that would have originally gone to counties, but Vermont doesn't have a strong county government. So those funds, our congressional delegation got permission to have those be reallocated to municipalities. And so Plainfield is getting an additional amount. The total for Plainfield will be $377,245 and a couple of cents. So we did get the first payment on this additional amount. So half of it in 2021, half of it in 2022. And that amount that we've gotten in total for the first allocation and the county allocation is $188,622.33. That and this is going to sit in a bank account until we can figure out what to do with it. Just to give you a little bit of an idea about some of the conditions that come along with it, we do have to report once a year on October 31st. And it's a report that basically says we got the money and what we did with it. And this report in October 31st will be pretty minimal because we won't have done anything with it by then, no doubt. There also are requirements for using the money and for having allocated it or obligated it in contracts. And those dates are a bit off. They're December 31st, 2024. Any contracts to use the funds have to have been made, and they have to have been spent. The funds have to have been spent by December 31st, 2026. So that gives us a bit of time to really assess what is it that we can do. And just to let you know, the final federal regulations have not yet been set out. So we actually wouldn't want to make any decisions until those regulations are pretty much graven in stone, so that we are not in a circumstance of having spent money and finding out that it was not in accord with the federal regulations relating to the American Rescue Plan Act money. But in general, what we're told so far is that we can spend money on in a number of areas. And some of these you may have seen by going to the website or other things I posted on social media. One is to respond to the public health emergency, that being the COVID pandemic, or its negative economic impacts. And that can include assistance to households, small businesses, and nonprofits, or aid to impacted industries. I don't think we have any, or tourism, travel, and hospitality. The money can also be used to respond to workers performing essential work during the COVID-19 public health emergency, and that's by providing premium pay to eligible workers. All of our workers are essential workers. We have 7 employees, if you don't count the select board, which works for pennies an hour. But there is that possibility of being able to provide premium pay. Did you guys sign in?
Oh, yes, thanks.
Thank you. Sorry, somebody just came in. And then another area that the money can be used for, at least this is what we're told so far, is for the provision of government services to the extent of reduction in revenue due to the COVID-19 public health emergency relative to revenues collected in the most recent full fiscal year prior to the emergency. So we'll be looking at this last year versus, I guess it'd be 2019 would be the previous full year. Certainly in the area that comes to mind in my mind is the reduced income from the town hall opera house, because we haven't been able to rent it. So that might be somewhere to take some of that money from the COVID money and put it into the general fund to compensate for those lack of funds. And then the last area is to make necessary investments in water, sewer, or broadband infrastructure. And it's pretty limited. You can, and also just to be aware, you can't use this federal money as a federal match. So we've been talking a great deal about the Brook Road Bridge. But one of the things the funds can't be used for, since the federal match for the Brook Road Bridge, it's FEMA money, Federal Emergency Management Agency, is 25%, comes to about $310,000. These COVID funds, even though you can, there's some infrastructure areas you can use, and they couldn't be used as match for that. They could be used for water and sewer, and one of the things to think about in terms of the, probably, I think was the last time we were told the water and sewer costs relating to the Route 2 Main Street intersection remediation project. The thought was that was going to come to, it was either 310 or 311. I can't remember which one is which. But that would not be match money. It's not matching. It's not, it's a project that it's a town project and we're matching. It would be our share of having to cover that obligation that arises as a result of having water lines. So that's a possibility. There also is obviously the broadband effort, which is being pretty well supported by the state overall, as I understand it. And we have CD Fiber, which is serving Plainfield and Eric, do you know how many other towns? It's a lot of other towns in central Vermont. And we did get an email from Jeremy Matt, who is one of the people who is our representative to the Central Vermont Fiber Board. And he is, he was urging us to at least make some contribution in that regard as well. So the funds cannot be used to cut taxes. They can't be used to make deposits to a pension fund. They can't be set aside for a rainy day fund. They can't be put in something to be considered a financial reserve in case we have needs down the road. If we have existing debt, they can't be used to pay down existing debt. We don't have any legal settlements, but if we did have a legal settlement, we couldn't use those funds to pay a legal settlement. And it can't be used to fund infrastructure that's not water, sewer, or broadband. And as I mentioned, it can't be used to match other federal programs. So it can't be used for infrastructure that's not specifically mentioned in the American Rescue Plan Act. And I think that that kind of covers the overview. Yeah, I told you about, yeah, I think that that covers it. And I know that we will have to make a report. I don't know that we need to approve that report at this meeting. It has to be by October 31st, so we can put it in one of the other agendas, but that has to be in our mind to make sure that we're getting that report in on time. So I think we're at a point, unless, for hearing from other select board members and hearing from anybody else in the community about what they would like us to think about.
Okay, so I think there's a lot of people on the call right now, and there's some here in the room. We're happy to listen to any suggestions people have about what we should use this money for. So if you want
Maybe
to
they
say
could put,
something,
maybe if they're on the Zoom, maybe they could put their hand up if
can
they
you
want to
use the
speak.
people who know how to use Zoom? Can you just raise your Zoom hand? That's or raise your hand visually. That if you're on camera, I think that's okay too. Peter Youngbear, you have your hand up. And unmute yourself.
Does that work?
Yes.
Hi, thank you for recognizing me. I have two items on behalf of the Plainfield Co-op that I'd like to put on the table. And one of them actually, Sasha, might be able to be done by this October. One of the things that ARPA talked about was improving ventilation. That is an issue that we have in the co-op. I have some staff who've been asking about air purifiers. We've done a little bit of research on what is necessary within the spaces that we have. And we're currently looking at one fairly large one in the retail space, one in the backstock area, and one upstairs in the office area. And from the numbers I've been able to look at so far, it looks like it's going to be around $2,000 for that. This is not anything that the co-op has in its budget, but and we don't have in that building, the old Grange Hall, any sophisticated HVA system. We actually just replaced the furnace, which had died. We had a broken cracked heat exchanger, so it got redlined red tagged by the engineer, and so that was just replaced. So not having a sophisticated HVA system in there, the solutions for this are few, and air purifiers are about the only thing that's there. Given that it's not only COVID, but we're heading into the cold and flu season when we tend to keep the doors and windows shut more, this will have a benefit, not just for the staff, but for also delivery people and our customers, the public. So we would like to request that a $2,000 be allocated. We believe that's clearly one of the improving ventilation criteria. It's COVID related, and it will benefit the community who uses the space. The second thing I don't have a specific request for, but I do note that hazard pay is something that is allowable. Last year, and I'm going back to April of 2020, we did institute hazard pay for our staff at the rate of $3 an hour additional. For most of our staff are part-time. That worked out to about $1,100 a week. And we continued that until, I believe, the beginning of July, when we phased it out halfway, and then over the next few weeks phased it out entirely. And this was as the state allowed businesses to reopen, and we met that criteria. So we did phase that down because the risk had lessened to our staff. But one of the other reasons we got rid of it is because we just couldn't afford it. We were losing money doing it, but it's what enabled people to stay employed, those who were able to do so. We have not had anything since then in terms of hazard pay, except at the very end of the year, the state did provide a one-time grant to certain essential workers across the state that arrived in December. About 8 of our staff were eligible for that because there were a minimum number of hours, and a lot of our part-time staff only work 1 or 2 days a week, and so did not meet that threshold. We've had nothing since then in terms of hazard pay. And I do note that some of our competitors have continued their hazard pay and continue their hazard pay today. So it does put us a little bit of a competitive disadvantage. Anyway, I just put that out on the table. If you are looking for additional places, we're not making a specific request at this time. I don't have any numbers to give you except the parameters there that last year we did $3 an hour to the staff, and it cost us about $1,100 a week. If the town were to give us any amount of money, we would probably give it as a one-time payment, or perhaps break it up into pieces, but not looking to do anything sustained. So just offering that as a viable opportunity and an allowable cost, apparently, from the ARPA outline that we read.
I have a question for you, Peter.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't know whether it's eligible, whether this hazard pay is okay for just municipal employees or not, but let's say for purposes of argument, it is. What are your thoughts about assuring that if we were to consider hazard pay for people at the co-op, what are your thoughts about assuring that a similar amount go to our own town employees?
Oh, I would absolutely support the town employees. That goes without saying.
I just wanted to check that.
All right, thank you.
I mean, Linda and Carol, I mean, what they've put up with, their working conditions, over the past year and a half is, just so laudable, and whatever we can give them, and if that applies to the road crew and the sewer and water crew as well, I'm less, I mean, the road crew is more outdoors. They do a lot of indoor stuff. I don't know what their social distancing situation is there, but absolutely take care of our people.
All right, thank you. So next person with their hand up is Jesse Cooper. If you want to unmute yourself.
Hi, just turning down my speaker.
Yeah, I can hear.
I do think that the use of funds for the Town Hall Opera House makes a lot of sense, as it's one of the entities in the town that clearly suffered a lot of financial, downside from the pandemic, and is something that's a valuable community resource. I'm also wondering, I am interested to see when the guidelines come through for how this can be spent, where we can find that. I guess you guys will probably put that out there. And in general, I'm wondering whether initiatives towards promoting more housing stock and or affordable housing falls into any of the guidelines that we've heard anything about so far, if we should expect that.
So we have Grace Vincent here from the Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission, and I'm actually making a list of questions to see if Grace can answer rather than doing it piece by piece. So I just put down one of the questions being affordable housing. So thank you for raising that. I know you mentioned that to us in an email, Jesse.
Yeah, great, thank you.
All right. Does that conclude your comments?
Yes.
Okay, great. The next person is Rose Paul. If you'd like to unmute yourself.
Yes, hello, thank you. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the Plainfield Conservation Commission. We've been trying to spruce up and keep in good shape the Plainfield Town Forest. And I know that we have been before the select board in the past concerning the condition of Gagno Road for about the last half mile before people get to the parking area for the town forest. Right now, that road isn't passable for passenger cars. So one of our members, Becky Atchison, had a conversation with Mike Nolan. It was either yesterday or today. And Mike told her what he thought the road would need for work. And it includes topping the road with gravel. And Mike gave an estimate of about $10,000 for the gravel that would have to be purchased. So the Conservation Commission would like the town to consider that amount in its deliberations and how it ties with the guidelines of the funds is that there's been a big increase in outdoor recreational activity and use of outdoor facilities during the pandemic because people were so cooped up inside. And so recreation trails, parks, and those kind of outdoor facilities have had a big uptick in usage. So helping people get access to the town forest on that side, we think is a reasonable fit with the COVID mitigation purposes of this funding. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. The next person who has their hand up is Pam, I think Pam Kelly Kinneberg.
Yes, thank you. My comment, well, I have two, is pretty general that I feel like if you drop right down to it, I think we need another river run. We need something that's really going to pull people into Plainfield, into the village, which our village is so sweet and it just really needs something. And I don't know what it is, but it's commercial. And then I have a question, and that is, and I apologize if this has already been answered, but how will the decision get made about how this money is spent?
We think the select board can do that without a town vote. On the other hand, that will probably be something Grace can tell us. I don't know that we're completely clear about that, but what is clear is all the recommendations are to have a vibrant community process seeking input from the community. I mean, there's obviously a lot of wisdom out there, and we know there's wisdom on the select board as well, just from having been involved in things. But it's we'll get you that answer because we need that answer too.
Yes, that was a good question.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. Alice Merrill, do you have some comments? You need to unmute. Alice, you have, okay, go ahead.
I got it. Sorry for the delay.
I'm just speaking in support of spending some of that money on the sewer and water improvements that would happen with the US 2 intersection improvements. We have an opportunity to work with VTrans to make that a safer intersection to access the village by. And that's why it's a timely expense. And it also allows us to improve lines that are old and will need to be replaced at some point in time. So this is a rare opportunity to have both the money and VTrans plan to work on Route 2 come together.
Okay, thanks, Alice.
You.
George, you had your hand up, George Cushing?
Yeah, I would support spending a lot of money on water and sewer because they're pretty much out of money. And there's a lot of, I talked to Greg yesterday, and there's a couple projects that could use the money to get things taken care of, like the School Street apartments. And around there, he said that would be number one. And Berry Hill, another that you could handle. They could do the intertwine with the paving stuff that's going on. And the other thing is the money that we now have, I don't know if it's in a bank account that's gaining interest, but why not put that money in a CD so that we're making money off it? That can be done. Just a thought.
I should mention, just for clarity, these funds, we can put them in an interest-bearing account, and the interest doesn't have to, what we do with the interest doesn't have to get reported to the feds. So the interest in that kind of situation is gravy. It requires a little bit more in bookkeeping. Currently, I think what's happened both in Barry and in Plainfield is they've been put into the fund with a different account number assigned to it. But the money is, I mean, literally just come in. The second chunk of money, which is about $245,000, literally, or it was 100, whatever came out to the total that I gave you, the total that we've gotten so far is
$188,000.
$122. So that money, I mean, literally has come in September. So sorting out how best to deal with this and putting it in an interest-bearing account, something I'm sure Linda will be looking at. We can ask her to look at as well.
Okay. There are a couple people here at the office that may have questions or comments.
And if you could please give us your name, because we're trying to keep track of, or the person who does the minutes, that would be helpful.
We're both with Cutler Memorial Library. This is Angela Oakland, our new director. I'm Carlos, the chair of the trustees.
I don't recognize Angela with a mask.
And we're also hoping, the library has experienced a significant uptick in use by families because of COVID. And it's very, very quickly strained our capacity for parking. We've been having to use parking down the street and at people's houses, and they've had people have to cross Route 2. There are a lot of children involved. And what we'd really like to do, if we can define this as accessibility, is widen our parking lot enough so that when people pull off of Route 2, they pull straight in so they can back out and then go on Route 2 straight forward instead of having to back on Route 2. And also so we can park more people so they're not having to park across it, biodiesel and things like that across the street. So those are the.
And so you need money for a project like that.
We'd like to, yeah, we want to widen, and it's even worse in winter when they snowplow.
Right.
Covers half the parking lot with snow piles.
Okay.
So yeah, that's what we're hoping that maybe we can get some funds to.
Any idea how much you would need to do what you want to
We
do?
haven't been able to do that feasibility study yet.
Okay.
We can get
All
to
right,
it.
that would be helpful.
We
Yeah.
can do that.
Great, thanks. Is that everything for now? Okay, great, thanks.
Thanks for coming.
Okay, anybody else? I see Betsy, you have your hand up? Betsy Siegler?
Yes, hi. Hi, this is Betsy. I just was calling again to say, I think, I hope that the town can continue to support the improvement projects that we have been discussing and are already on our plate. And the one that sounds like we could use this funds for would be the Route 2 intersection project and the sewage and water lines that we would need to be we need to pay for. So I think that would be an excellent use of this money. And the other improvement that I would love to see, I know we used the rec field a lot during the last year and a half for meetings and public events. And I've really come to appreciate what it can offer. And one of the things I think we could do to improve that offering is to work on the parking lot and remove that big pothole that we have down there that is about 20 by 20 and about still about 4 inches deep or something. It really reduces the availability of parking for people. And that
So
was
something that we could use, the extra material from the pedestrian bridge project, perhaps to fill in that big pothole. You may want to think about that.
Yeah, so unfortunately, because they didn't take out as much material, we don't really have any extra material anymore. So, yeah, sorry.
Never mind.
I convinced them to keep the half the wall.
Jesse Cooper, you spoke already, but your hand's up again. Did you have additional comments?
Is there anybody else?
Everybody else, please.
Yeah,
Okay, you lower your hand.
sorry, I did want to make another comment if that was possible.
Okay, go ahead. Go
Just-
ahead.
Just following up on what Alice and Betsy and others have said, I definitely think that where wastewater infrastructure is cited as a specific area, I think getting some sort of a summary from the water and sewer department about what kind of improvements and projects they could put that money towards makes a lot of sense. That seems pretty critical to the town, and this seems like an opportunity to help that out.
And in response to that, and it's probably January of 2020, when we were having some meeting, maybe in February, when the volunteer committee was meeting and talking about this, Greg Chamberlain was there. And one of the things he was sharing at that time was, because at that point, the thought was it might be $1 million worth of cost to deal with the water and sewer lines relating to the Route 2 Main Street intersection. And I distinctly remember Greg saying, if I had $1 million, I already know where I could put it. So my guess is water and sewer already has very clearly in mind what they could do with anything really from $50 to the entire 300,000. But it certainly would be helpful to hear more directly from them. And I think if we don't have other questions or comments, we might put Grace on the spot if she's willing to be put on the spot. Grace Vincent, are you?
Yes, I'm happy to answer questions as I can.
Okay. So the first, I'm going to just go through the list in order, but just the order that I wrote them. In terms of the hazard pay provision, you know, I was reading that hazard pay for town employees. Am I mistaken in that? Peter got me thinking, maybe I didn't understand how that, what the scope of that was. Do you, and you may not know the answer to that either.
Yeah, so for hazard pay, the rule talks about essential workers being eligible. That definitely obviously includes town employees, but could also, depending on details, may also include people who, you know, work in grocery stores, for example, or people who work in environments where they come into contact with individuals who, you know, might have COVID or something like that. So it could be.
I have read that the money, if you've already received money as an essential worker, you can't double up and get it from another source for the same hours. It would have to be for different hours that you worked that you hadn't gotten that money. Is that's
right? Yeah, so if you have gotten hazard pay before, you can still get it under ARPA, but it has to be for a different time period. So for ARPA, the time period we're thinking about is March 2021 onwards.
Okay, so then the next question I had, Bessie had mentioned the idea of, is it possible to put some of this money toward affordable housing? Do you know anything about that?
That is a tricky one, and obviously a lot of communities are talking about that. Off the bat, I don't have a firm answer on whether that would be eligible or not. It depends on the intended use. It's not one of those four main uses that you went over. I don't know. I could go into a lot of detail, but I've been going back and forth with VLCT about this because I had a similar question from a Mad River Valley community. And my answer right now, all I can say is it depends, but probably not for affordable housing.
Okay.
But again, like you said, the final rule hasn't come out yet, so there could be more information in there.
So the other one that was raised, another one that was raised by a couple of people was the issue of recreational activity. And the Conservation Commission had come to the select board relating to the improvement of Gagne Road. And that there is a town forest and Gagne Road is one of the ways to access it. And do you have any information about whether fixing up a road to get to a recreational space could conceivably be thought to be something that could be paid for under the American Rescue Plan Act?
Yeah, so that is another really good question. These are really good questions. So I have seen information that like the increased use of parks and recreation facilities, you know, resulting in damage or increased maintenance could be seen as a negative economic impact. So if, you know, there was some specific facility that needed maintenance or upkeep, I'm not as sure about the road because it's not the actual, you know, recreation asset, but I'll definitely look into that more.
That's the whole purpose for the road, is to get to that asset.
Okay,
It doesn't have any other purpose.
okay,
I would
that's helpful.
I would throw in the parking lot problem at the rec field also. Is another area that might is in the same situation as that road to the Plainfield Park.
Right, and then it brings in the question about, so the library is an independent nonprofit. We fund it every year. We don't do anywhere near as good as Marshfield does in funding their library, but in any case, so, and I know that they had before, there was even the American Rescue Plan Act, the library had raised, is there some way that there could be some funding for, or maybe it was relating to the ARPA, the library parking lot. And I'm guessing that the answer is kind of the same of it needs more research.
Yeah, I would say, so in general, it's important to think about whenever you're presented with like a potential project, think about how it connects to COVID, right? Because all of these funds are supposed to be spent on COVID recovery and relief. So for example, you can transfer your money or you can supply some of your money to a nonprofit like the library, but it would need to be for an eligible use. And I would need more information and I can do some more research on how, you know, widening the parking lot would be connected to some kind of impact they may have had from COVID. And then from there, maybe we can do some more digging on whether it would be eligible.
Well, I would just note that the increased usage of the library because of COVID was, I think, one of the things that the librarians mentioned. So, and the idea is we hope that will continue even after COVID.
And I suppose one other way to deal with this, if for the library or some other nonprofit like that, would be to find something else that they need to do and use the funds that might otherwise have been paid for out of their own budget for that, and then use the other funds for the parking lot. The last one that I have on my list was how will the decision be made about the spending? And do you know whether we have to get the approval of the town, or do you know whether the select board gets to spend this big pile of money without there being a budget item and allocated?
So yeah, so it's my understanding, and again, I will get this confirmed. It's my understanding based on my conversations with VLCT and reading the rule that the municipality has the decision-making authority. And if you remember, you designated that authorized representative when you signed up for all the funds. And I think it's my understanding that the idea is that that authorized representative, who presumably works for the town, will kind of be in charge of, you know, figuring out the list of projects to be funded. I have not heard anything about town votes being required. I wouldn't think they would be, but again, before I say that with 100% certainty, I can get that confirmed and get back to you.
And I imagine we're not the only entity wondering about that.
Right.
Yeah, definitely not.
So Grace, I'm gonna ask you.
So we're
kind of a-
hearing from our reporter here that Berrytown is operating as though they don't need to get authorization in a town meeting. And I will mention that Berrytown actually has a financial officer. I called her up and she gave us some materials that I learned about through a Times article. And she was very, very gracious. And I was immediately just so I was just craving that we had the resources to have a financial officer as well, because we don't have that. Anyway, so good to know. Thank you.
Alice asked if we had already talked about water and wastewater. We have.
Oh, we have talked about it repeatedly.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
Several people have said this is a good thing to
All
do.
right, that's what I thought. Okay. Tammy, you were about to say something?
Yeah, so Grace, I'm gonna kind of pick your brain because I know you had said that you had you were doing a lot of these meetings with towns and so on. So can you share with us some of the ideas that other towns are, just to kind of get us maybe thinking in a different direction, or can you give us some ideas of what other people had thought about?
Yeah, definitely. So, for example, Marshfield, they're thinking about using some of their funds to add a porch to the library to accommodate the increased use of the library and also allow for like social distancing. So that would be one of those eligible uses, renovating a public space to prevent the spread of COVID. That's an example. A lot of the communities I've been talking to are thinking about water, wastewater, sewer projects. One thing I would note is that wastewater projects, they need to be aligned with these two EPA programs, the Clean Water Service Revolving Fund and the Drinking Water Service Revolving Fund. And those are two programs that already exist at the federal and at the state level. So the state is working on putting out more information about what those programs are exactly and what kind of projects are eligible, so towns can look at that list and kind of line it up with their projects. Stormwater is another thing that's being brought up a lot because, again, that is one of the categories, but it also does need to align with that EPA program that I just mentioned. I'm trying to think. A lot of the conversations have been around broadband, water, wastewater, and kind of thinking about what kind of lost revenue a community might have that they need to kind of put back into that bank account.
Okay, thank you. So any other
Thank
questions?
you very much.
Or comments? Yes,
I have
Carla.
a question. Is another project that we've been talking about at the library.
This is Carla Siegel from the library.
I'm sorry, hi
Sure.
again. Another project we've been talking about at the library is we have a garage space that's currently not usable. It's been sort of locked away. I wouldn't use the word condemned, but it's not considered a safe space. And we would love to, we have talked about rebuilding that space so that we can use it for outdoor venues. Because of COVID, we have to do almost everything outdoors. And so that would definitely be something that might fall under this reboot.
And I think that is my guess. And again, the final federal guidelines have not come down yet, but my guess is that would be probably more likely to fall under this in terms of the increased use of the library and being able to think about how do we do things in a way that would be COVID preventative rather than the parking lot. So, you guys may want to be thinking about various things like that. And also just be realizing that although $377,000 is an unbelievable, just wonderful thing, there are a bunch of competing interests, and how we sort that out is going to be challenging. But it's really good to hear from people. As I say, I don't think we are going to be making decisions right away because we need to first wait for the final federal guidelines. But I'm sure we'll be taking this up again at other meetings, and where somebody may 2 or 3 weeks from now go, oh, I don't know why I didn't mention that. This is something really important as well. And please feel free to get a hold of us. If you haven't memorized our email address, the email address for Jim is selectboard19@gmail.com. For Tammy, it's selectboard8@gmail.com. And for me, it's selectboard23@gmail.com. And it's really wonderful if you can send it to all three of us, so somebody doesn't have to pass it along. But do feel free to stay in touch, and if you come up with other thoughts, or maybe thoughts about what that might be more persuasive than what you shared with us so far.
So I will mention, I know that we received an email also. The senior center also put in a request for money for the heat pump.
And
so I just wanted to make sure that got on our list.
Yeah, and one of the interesting things for the senior center is thinking about, though it only now provides services 3 days a week in person, is there's a lot of places all over the country, and actually all over the developed world, where they do co-location of daycares with seniors, and thinking about how can we help people get back to work. I mean, daycare has become a really, really big issue with COVID in terms of people getting, being able to come back to work and seeing that kind of resource. So that's another thing that people can maybe be thinking about creatively. Is this something that would make sense to support socially? Is there some way to meet some of the needs? And with the senior center, they are certainly, providing food to people who are not going out because they're concerned about COVID, as well as people in place at this point. So a lot to think about.
Yep, I agree. So thanks everybody for all the comments and ideas, which very much appreciated. And if you think of other things that Sasha said, send us an email. Tammy.
So I guess I'm going to go back to, this is even just the ideas, of course, then it's going to be trying to research and identifying whether they meet criteria and so on, and then talking with other people as well. So I know that I had suggested last meeting to set up a committee to start working on some of this, and maybe going to, I know the league is providing some webinars and so on. And so I'm kind of coming back to the question of maybe thinking about setting up a committee to evaluate options, trying to, maybe doing a survey and sending that out to more of our community. I think this is a great opportunity, but I think we need to recognize it's a pretty big research project that we need to evaluate. So I guess I'm just trying to see what your thoughts are in the sense of setting up that committee.
I guess my thought relating to research is that there's going to be some definitive standards from the feds. And I know that the Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission is serving not only Plainfield, but other towns to help come up with clarity. And the league is providing that as well. So I suspect there's not going to be a need for research on particular projects. We're going to need to wait to hear, with more definition. And what's come down so far that I mentioned so far has been pretty clear. And it's been pretty clear for many months now what these parameters are. They haven't changed, but you never know what they might do when they send down final decision making. I think if we were to do a committee, we need to be really clear about what we are looking for. The thing I feel a little burnt in terms of what happened with the Route 2 Main Street intersection, where we had a committee and, people were very much, and I'm not saying that they were wrong in this, but they were very much invested in things coming out a certain way. And we as a select board may have a different perspective in terms of how we use this one-time money. And it may, and from my perspective, I think we may want to just keep our finger on the pulse a little bit more, especially because we aren't in a situation where we even have final guidelines. I'm also concerned about having a circumstance where people are having a feeling, oh, I'm pretty sure we can get a part of this. And then, that not happening just because it doesn't seem like the best thing to do. I don't know how one balances wanting to involve people and then not, raising hopes too high in a way that becomes really, really frustrating for people, legitimately frustrating when their hopes are dashed. Those are some of my thoughts in terms of that at this point.
So, personally, I think a committee could be a good idea. I think it's something we should think about. If people are interested in being on a committee, they could send us emails and let us know what they think about, whether they'd be willing to be on one, and what they think about the idea. If you don't think it's a good idea, you can also let us know that. I think we don't need to make a decision about that now. We could wait till, I think we need to wait till the guidelines and the rules actually come out and take a look at what they say about what we're supposed to be doing. And then I think that's an idea. The committee is an idea we could revisit at a later date.
Well, I mean, I think the key is, I hear what Sasha's saying. The people on this committee are people that are looking at all projects, not a project they want. And I think that's an important piece, that when being part of a committee, it's really open to the idea of looking and at everything. But that's really what I'm looking for, not somebody that's interested in one project. So I would agree with that, but I do think that there is going to be some research. Just in reference to water, the wastewater and all those different criteria, there's different projects, there's different criteria that go along with that. And I think that as people, come up with different projects, just for example, the library and its space, how is that going to be working with the entire community, and how can we, evaluate or weigh those different projects? And I do think that there's more questions that need to be answered. And I don't know that necessarily a select board meeting is the place to do that. To try to, gather information of what makes their project more important than the next project. And I really think that, we can definitely be part of that. But I do hear that we don't want to lose that, maybe, making sure every project is evaluated. But I do think there's a lot of research in reference to that.
Yeah.
So in terms of,
and I think the key to using a committee, if you're going to use a committee, is what the charge is to the committee, to be really clear what their expectation is of what they're supposed to do, what the scope of their authority is, if any. So I think that you can use it that way.
and I think in terms of water and wastewater, I would be extremely surprised if they don't already know the ins and outs of those two programs, because I'm sure they work with those programs. And I know in terms of Tristan did a huge amount of work in terms of redoing their regulations, and part of that was to be in response to some requirements. So I may be wrong, and maybe they aren't familiar with them, but I bet they also know how to figure out how they apply to them, and that they would want to do that because they don't want to be in a situation, if there were money allocated to them, that would have to get paid back because it wasn't done properly. So I don't think a committee like this could be really useful, but I don't think that we would expect them to research and then tell the water and wastewater people, these are what your requirements are. I think we might get some backlash.
In reference to the wastewater, just for example, does the Route 2 project fit within that, or does it not? And that would be the question. And knowing those guidelines is.
The Route 2 project is not matching money. It's not where it's our project.
Correct. It is our project.
No, it's not. It is a state of Vermont project. The state of Vermont is funding it. And then there are requirements that we cover certain aspects, but it's not something where we have to come up with a 10% match or something like that. If it were that kind of project, it would clearly not be funded. But we could certainly, I'm probably.
So I guess, are you trying to say that it would be, or it wouldn't be? I'm not clear on your.
I think it would be, because it is not for federal match, and because the law specifically says that water and wastewater projects are that comply with these other programs, that they are part of what is being focused on, investments in water and sewer or broadband infrastructure. So,
right. So the question, but they have to fit those other criteria of the wastewater program. So that's what the question is. So does that project meet that? And that's, again, the research that we have to do to establish whether.
I bet you they already would know the answer to that because
But we
they,
don't need to sort this out right now.
Yeah.
It's,
Right.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda are appointments.
yeah, and I think we already appointed Gary Smith. And we do have somebody from that's interested in being on the Development Review Board, but we're still waiting.
To get an application. from
Yeah,
them.
and I should mention, just while we're on appointments, I think the DRB could use another member even when this
Yes,
one
we're
comes
supposed-
on.
we're down to 3 members, including me, and my term, no, and so it would be nice that if we can have up to 5, it's very helpful for us to have more than 3.
And I know Sarah Albert has left town, and
Right.
she was also on the Conservation Committee. And my guess is if there's somebody that thinks that this is something they'd like to do, please do send us all an email.
Right.
And then also, as was mentioned, one of our school directors stepped down because she's going to go work and have a teaching job in
Thanks
Walden.
for coming.
So there is a need for a school director. Now, the school director, we probably would want to have somebody to talk to, somebody who's been a school director, but that is something that the select board does appoint. They certainly could get a hold of Patrick Healy, who's the chair of the board, to get a little bit better idea what that entails, or any other former board members. And I wanted to mention that we have a new emergency management coordinator, Carla Straight, who I appointed as emergency management director. She's the coordinator, and she comes to us with energy and about 12 years of experience in this position. So I'm just delighted to have somebody come forward with the kind of experience she's had. She's also been in a position of evaluating tabletop exercises and giving people feedback. So we're just really, really fortunate to have somebody say, could I come play with you? And do it very productively. I think those are the only ones in terms of appointments that I remember.
Okay, good. I think that does cover it. So any other business?
And
I'm not aware of any.
no, and for the agendas, I did add a thing about the parking issue that George raised for the October 19th meeting.
Okay, good. So what about the October 5th is our next board meeting.
Right, but I think what Tammy pointed out is that agenda seemed pretty big, so
Right.
she talked about it, doing it on the 19th.
Right.
So
Yep.
I put it down to add to the 19th.
Okay, great. Anything else that we need to talk about?
Other than the executive session, I don't think
So we
so.
have to go into executive session. So I need a motion to go, well, we need everybody who's on the Zoom call to drop.
Well, the executive session, so I move that we go into executive session to discuss possible litigation.
Okay.
And we can take a vote on that, and then everybody will need to kick everybody off.
Okay, all in favor of going into the executive session?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous. Now, everybody except for the board members has to drop off. There's one more phone that's still on.
And we,
There's 2 people.
Okay, there it goes. There it goes. No.
there's
still
one more person, somebody on the telephone, if they could.
461-7333. Whoever that is needs to drop off, or can we cut them
I
off?
think we can be with it.
I think because we're the host, you can drop people off. Right?
Just
That's
try
not the
that.
one you picked, you pick rename,
Oh, sorry.
put in waiting room.
Remove.
Remove. There you go.
Yes, okay.
There you go. Yep, they're gone.
Okay, so wait just a minute so I am going to
We're gonna go.
Stop recording.
lock the meeting. So there we go. And then I'm going to,
Stop recording.
I'm sorry.
Go
Yes, and so then I think I just want to make sure that under security that the meeting is locked, and I would pause the recording if that's okay with you guys.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
In recording.
Okay, we just came out of an executive session where we were discussing litigation. It was a status report on where we were. We didn't make any decisions, and there's nothing to report.
I move that we adjourn.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and thanks a lot, Tammy. Appreciate everything you're doing.
And the time is now 9:04 PM.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, take care.
Good night.
Bye.
Do you lock the door downstairs door when you leave?
Yeah, sure. Yep, you need the back one or I come in?
Yeah, the one on the ramp. The one on the ramp. Yeah, and you can, then that way I don't have to take care of that.
Yeah, what do you like here?
Well, I don't have to worry about me being locked. I just know it's locked.
Okay.
So that's good. Thank you.
I'm thinking I'm not too something when you go out.
No, I'll make sure it doesn't lock. I'll probably go out the other way. Yeah, perfect.
All right, okay, fine.
Okay.